everyone, this is Kim Bussey, the Key Relationship Manager here at Omnia, and we are so happy that you joined us today. This is our final series in our 4-week series on employees and from recruiting and hiring through their 90 days. So you've recruited them, you've found them, you've asked them some of those behavioral-based interview questions. We talked about onboarding last week, and now we're going to talk about Painless 90-day employee performance evaluation. If you can hear me, at the top of your screen there is an icon of a person with their hand raised. Go ahead, raise your hand if you can hear me okay. If you agree or disagree with something I say, feel free to select one of those, or even in our comments and questions. We are going to have a Q&A session. However, we want to make sure that don't wait. Ask your questions. We'll address them as we go. If you need me to speak a little louder or speak a little softer, or speed up or slow down, either one. And because I can't hear you, but I always appreciate laughter and applause, you can select that as well. If you don't currently follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, please go ahead and do that. You'll get some great newsletters and information, as well as know when our webinars are recording. Now today we have something a little bit different. So we have Alfio with us. Alfio is our senior consultant at the Omnia Group. We brought him on board, guess what, about 90 days ago. So Alfio, why don't you go ahead and say hello to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, welcome today, and thank you for Kim. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to speak with you guys about my experience as being a new employee. It has been a long time since I've been a new employee with an organization. It's so far very smooth. We'll be talking today a lot about some of the things that I experienced coming on board here, and it's really beneficial. I would say to get that feedback from someone who's coming on as a new employee, and not only just from other supervisors getting feedback, but from someone who's actually going through it right now. So it's going to be a pleasure to discuss this with you today, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of shed some light on it.
Thanks, Alfio. We're really excited because today we're going to take it a little bit different. So weeks 1, 2, and 3 really came from the supervisor perspective. But when it comes to evaluations, we know it's a two-way street. So we're going to give you a little bit of some of that information too from the employee perspective. Now, if you happen to miss any of our 3 webinars, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. The recordings are up there. The recording for this will be up as well in a few weeks. That's why it's so important to follow us on social media. Also, if you're going to frantically be writing about this presentation, it will go ahead and you'll hear at the end of our session, you'll be able to download that presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. I want you to think of one word, just one, that's describing your biggest fear or dread when you think about an evaluation. So maybe it's time, maybe it's, critical, maybe it's, what words do I have to speak? But go ahead and what's your biggest fear or dread? This is going to be interactive. Type it in this message box. So for me, when I think about it, and I think it's that my biggest fear is the unknown. As a leader, I always want to say that I give feedback, and I think I do, but is that feedback that I'm giving the right feedback? So go ahead, type it in. So I'm seeing for me, my unknown, I see negative feedback. The employee might back you into a corner. I love that. And that's a huge fear because we're having this conversation and the evaluation is supposed to be a positive thing, right? But what if the employee comes back with you and now it goes from being a positive, you've been here for 90 days, let's talk about it, to something that's emotional, no feedback. I love what we're seeing. I see overall that there is just hostile reactions and defensive. How do we take that down? And from us as leaders, that's a big fear. We're really talking about them about the 90 days. We're still getting to know the employee. So if you're not using something like the Omnia for a behavioral assessment that gives you a little bit of insight into who they are before you hire them, 90 days isn't a lot of time to get to know each other. So how are they going to communicate? How are they going to receive the feedback? What, and even after 90 days, what do I even really think about this? It's one of those things that you say, hmm, how do I handle this? Where am I going to go from it? And really, from the supervisor, that fear keeps us from that 90-day employee evaluation, right? So, by a show of hands, how many of you would much rather just let the evaluation go? I don't want to make it in something formal, but now I've got to put paper to pen, pen to paper and really think about that. Really think about how do I word it. And studies have shown that we typically remember what's happened in the past 30 days, right? So if something happened when someone first came on board, how much of a leeway, how much grace do we give them to say, okay, they're brand new? And what needs to be addressed, because we don't want to make this experience hostile. We don't want them to feel like all I'm giving you is this negative feedback. Alfio, you didn't do this right, and you didn't do this right, and you didn't do this right. This is going to be key for understanding it. So, Alfio, let's hear a little bit from the employee perspective. So, just finishing up your 90 days, what do you think when okay, my 90 days is coming up and I've got this evaluation hanging over my shoulders?
Yeah, great question, Kim. When I first came on, it was kind of a shock to be that new employee again. And you did set the expectation for me that there will be a 90-day evaluation. So in that regard, knowing that it was coming kind of took some of the stress off. But at this point, and prior to the first 90 days, there were still just a lot of questions. Of course, I was getting a lot of answers to those questions as I continued to train and become more comfortable in my role. But yeah, there was some underlying stress there. Being able to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, being able to know exactly what it is that was expected of me and what I'll be kind of assessed on, or should I say evaluated on, was very helpful. So it can be a stressful thing, but it was also something that I was looking at. I was almost like a goal setting experience. I had set 90-day goals for myself. And I knew what was going to be asked of me by Omnia. So it's a good experience. It is a little stressful, though. I'm not going to lie.
Well, and I think some of that stress comes from it as well as I think I'm doing a good job, but what if I'm really not, right? So, or I may think you're doing a great job and you're going to come in and tell me, I hate this. I can't do it anymore. So the stress goes two ways. What we're going to talk to you today about is how to take that stress, alleviate, make it painless, not only for you, but for the employee as well. Now, there's this great new trend that's happening, and the jury's still out on it from my perspective, where many companies are going away from the annual evaluation. They're looking at it where it's outdated. The employee shouldn't only find out, once a year how they're doing and what's happening. And on that aspect, I agree with it. However, I do think that we know that we have to make sure that we're giving that feedback to our employees, whether it's constructive feedback on areas where they can improve on or did wells. It's crucial because if not, the frustration level on every side grows, especially during that first 90 days. So during the first 90 days, there's 4 stages of learning that everyone goes through. So when they come on board, whether it's for a new job or even a new position within the company, they go through these stages. The first stage is what is the unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. I always like to say it's the puppy dog stage. Woohoo, I'm excited I got the job. Yeah. Then the next stage is the conscious and competent stage. That's the stage when I kind of call it affectionately the honeymoon is over. I know what I don't know. So Alfio shared that we have 2 weeks of classroom training, and it's very intense on the Omnia assessment, understanding how to analyze clients and analyze those natural behavioral traits and which jobs would go better with it. And so, Alfio, when you were in that first couple of weeks of training, about how did you feel? Like, how quickly did your "I'm happy I'm here" change to "what have I gotten myself into"?
Yeah, Kim, about 48 hours max. Um, just as you described, it's a very intense training situation that we are kind of plunged into. But it just raised the amount of questions that I had, and I knew that it was going to take time, and some of my initial goals that I had set for myself needed to be readjusted because I didn't know what to expect prior to getting in. It was all positive, but there were a lot of questions, and more and more and more building as the training continued.
Oh, thanks for sharing. And that's
Mhm.
just in that first two stages. And we train very intensively during that first 2 weeks because of what we do. But that unconscious incompetence stage, if you have on the job training, or it's more of a, well, you've got the experience, but we're going to put you into this position because you're coming from another company. So, it's all the same. If we're in insurance, renewals are renewals are renewals. We've just got to adjust how we work with it. However, think about this as if you promote someone from within. How long is that unconscious incompetence? I'm happy I got the promotion going to last. The third stage is that conscious competence. So they go from "I don't know what I don't know" to "I know what I don't know" until they go to "I know what I know." That's when we're starting to hit our groove as employees. We're starting, and I want to emphasize starting to understand what I need to do. I don't have to refer to my notes as much. I'm not always asking questions. I'm feeling like I'm almost like I'm contributing to the team a little bit more. Still not at the same level as someone who's been there for a couple of years, but I can contribute. And then the final stage is what that unconscious competence, or "I don't know what I know." So those are those people who've been in their position for a long, long time. And they're like, "Yeah, I know what I need to do. And I'm good." And, well, how do you do that? "Oh, I don't know. I just do it." It becomes such an integral part of who they are. And so, what's in the chat box below, at the end of 90 days, where do you think a new employee should be? Do you think they should be in the unconscious incompetence stage, the conscious incompetence, so that "I know what I don't know"? The conscious competence, or maybe we think that they should be like in that unconscious competence where like it should all be second nature. So we're seeing some various things. So we're seeing that conscious competence, that third stage of you should be starting to get it. We're seeing that, okay, well, maybe they're still like in the "I don't know, I know what I don't know." And what we tend to see is that, I love that Holly says they should be in the competent stage or at least approaching it. And here is the thing, is that they should be at least approaching it. Holly's absolutely correct. Because depending on how technical and changing the industry is and the position is, that they each stage should last about 30 days. So think about it. They're going to spend their first 30 days in that unconscious incompetence, that "I'm just happy to have my job." 60 days, they're okay. "I know what I don't know, but I'm maneuvering and transitioning around it." 90 days is that third stage. However, a lot of times, subconsciously or even consciously, managers, supervisors, and employees have this put this undue pressure on themselves that they should all be at this unconscious competence stage. From the supervisor aspect, it's kind of like, okay, we've sent you through training, you've been through training, you've had job shadowing, you've had mentoring. I should be able to let you go and let you fly, and you understand it. From the employee's aspect, they're looking around, especially if they're joining a well-established team, and they're thinking, wow, I should be able to do what Kim's been doing, and she's been doing it for 4 years. That's not the case. And then when you add in, like what Sue says, is if the industry is ever changing and everyone is learning nonstop, that's when you want to look at some additional skills testing before you hire them. Maybe you look at a cognitive test, such as our Omnia Cognitive, where you can see their general mental agility. Also, I would look at, what are they that continuous education that's offered. But for that first time 90 days, they're not going to be where they expect to be. As supervisors, part of this painless 90-day evaluation is setting that expectation from the beginning. I don't expect you to be that person to be at the same level as someone who's been with me for 3, 4, 5 years. Now, if they have some work experience in the industry, you may take a step back and go, I don't expect you to know that in my areas, in my culture, but I do expect you to bring some of that knowledge that you can add to it. So, for example, Alfio mentioned that he was a business owner and a teacher. Part of his role here is sales, as that senior consultant, and presenting. So for us, we had high expectations of him about making presentations. In fact, how long was it before you co-presented with us, Alfio?
Oh, it was maybe 2 weeks after training.
Yeah. So he had been with us about 30 days, and we're like, okay, we're going to bring you in so that you can see this workshop, but we're going to have you do a couple of presentations with us. Talk about a couple of slides. We depended on his abilities and experience from a previous employer and previous life experience to come into to join into that. However, if it's someone who's brand new, they may not have that. So they may spend more time in the conscious and competent stage because they're learning everything from the very, very beginning. So knowing that, why would we even evaluate at 90 days? So go ahead in that upper left-hand box, tell me why you think we evaluate at 90 days. If we know that they're not going to be at a level where we really want them to be at, that we may have some undue expectations, that the employee may have some undue expectations, why are we even evaluating? And officially, because you should be having conversations with them throughout those 90 days. And then as you're typing that, also think of what are some of those common expectations of the employees at 90 days. And so we're seeing some of that feedback. It provides that two-way feedback before employee and department and company. Learn what they're struggling with. Absolutely know where they're getting, where you want them from. Addressing comments from the 30 and 60-day evals. If not, it's time to separate. So I love that frequent check-in. Let's talk at 30, 60, 90 days. We want to make sure that you have that great cultural fit. It's important, and love these comments. You guys are right on point. Everyone's on point, that we want to really begin that conversation. Correct any misdirection. Let's keep those new employees engaged. And then also to be able to mark, are they showing any of that improvement? So the 90 days shouldn't be just a check mark. There is some time that needs to be spent on it, because the common expectations of the employee at 90 days is they want to improve, right? Am I in the right job? You may have discovered that they're a great cultural fit, but they're not in the right seat. And I am a big believer we have to have the right person in the right position, right person, right seat on the bus. And if not, then let's adjust those seats if we need to. They should know the basics, absolutely. So some of those expectations of the employee is, do you have a good grasp of the basics? Depending on the role. Love that, Holly. So producers, especially, we expect them to start bringing in business typically at that 90 days, especially if they already have that book of business. If it's someone more on the service side that's very detail oriented and compliant, clients, they may need a little bit, even process oriented, they may need a little bit more time to ramp up. So, Alfio, let's talk about some of your expectations at 90 days since you are in more of a sales role. What what was your goal at 90 days? What were you thinking?
Well, by the time 90 days rolled around, I had wanted to be contributing to, well, the sales growth. I was brought in on some big meetings early on. Company goals were shared with me, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of reaching those goals. I also had my personal financial goals. This is sales that I'm in, and when it comes down to it, it's sales that I wanted to achieve. So looking at that 90-day mark, I wanted to find success with sales, bringing in new clients for the organization, helping to implement new strategies for clients, and with their hiring processes. And I had a set dollar value of where I thought I should be when I first came in the door, and then after training, I had readjusted that to a more accurate goal, and I reached it. So um, you know, looking at it in that sense, it was largely just based off of sales. I did have several other goals for making sure that, I had brought in a certain number of viable prospects, that I was contributing to seminars and to different educational events, um, and all of which were, I kind of set those expectations for myself for 90 days based off of the feedback that I was getting from my direct supervisors.
Great, thank you. Now, as we talk about that and that understanding, Alfio readjusted his thought process as he was going through it. I know that there was a lot of conversation as well with readjusting with that, with his direct supervisor. And I love the comment that someone made of that weekly 10-minute check-ins. That's crucial. Conversation is key with this because let's think about this. In the first 90 days, let's just talk about some of the things that the employee is learning. They're going about their benefits. They're learning training, their new processes and systems, where the break room is, where to park. Okay, let me get to know my coworkers. Now I've got to worry about, well, what's around here? If I want to go out for lunch, what's around here? And that's only the written guidelines. What about those unwritten guidelines of where, hey, we spend the first couple of minutes just touching base, and I'm used to coming into my office and just jumping right into it. So to be successful, both the supervisor and employee must communicate with each other. It has to be a two-way street. So it's kind of like this. The supervisor has to give clear direction and the employee has to give feedback. Think of it this way. You and I are going on a road trip, and I know where I want to be, and you know where you want to be. It's going to be a 48-hour road trip. So I know, okay, we're in Florida. We're going to drive from Florida to Tennessee. It's about a 12-hour drive. In my head, we're going to take a nice leisurely tour. We're going to drive about halfway, go to Atlanta, spend the night, see a couple of the aquarium, visit a couple of things in Atlanta, and then continue on to Tennessee. Get there mid-afternoon and enjoy it. However, you on the other hand is like 12 hours. Let's hop in the car and go. I want to just get there. If we're not having a conversation about my thoughts and where I want to be and your thoughts and where you want to be, do you think we're going to have a very pleasant road trip? No, we're not. Because I'm going to be meandering and you're going to be like, "Can you get your gas on, get your foot on the gas?" Or vice versa. You're going to have the pedal to the metal and I'm like, "Wait a minute. I want to stop." "No, we don't have time. We've got places to be." So as a supervisor, you set the tone for this 90 days as well as setting the tone for the performance evaluation. It's critical. You give clear expectations, goals, and objectives and check in frequently. Whether it's a 10-minute weekly touch base, you're talking to their trainer, their mentor, and then be available. A lot of times you may have new employees who just drift away. And they're drifting away because I can't talk with them, or I go to talk to my manager and there may be a fear. No one wants to walk into their supervisor and say, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. Can I get some extra information? They don't want to look stupid. But the supervisor has to set that expectation. I want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Also, the employee needs to speak up about their struggles, their obstacles, and successes. We want to celebrate those successes. And when it comes with a pay increase with those reviews, it is industry by industry. Typically, there are not pay increases with the 90-day evaluations. It's more of a check-in. Let's pull over. If we're on a road trip, let's pull over into that rest area, stretch our legs, see how it's going. Now, it may be something that's negotiated, or it's in a role that's a high producer and you're going to take a look at it. But really, the 90-day, that expectation should be that we're checking in with them. And that's a great question, because you want to take it back to setting clear expectations and goals by letting the employee know in advance, right after they come out of training, here are our next steps. We're going to have weekly 10-minute conversations. At 30 days, we're going to do a check-in, 60 days, or in 90 days, we're going to sit down. I'm going to have you do an appraisal of where you think you are. I'm going to give you some information as well, and we're going to use that to develop an action plan for the rest of the year, so that when your performance evaluation and pay increases come along annually or quarterly or whatever it may be, you are set up for success. With that as well, here are 5 steps for delivering that painless employee evaluation. And this is really behind the scenes. So the first thing is you want to do is you want to prepare, you want to plan, then you're going to put pen to paper, communication, and then follow up. And 4 and 5 are crucial. They all build on each other, but 4 and 5 are non-negotiables. And unfortunately, step 1 goes away, and then we typically get step 3. And that's where the stress is coming from. That's step 3. So let me ask you this. So you prepare for every position evaluation, either always, sometimes, rarely, or never. And then you prepare the evaluation, and be honest, a week before the eval, 2 days before the evaluation, the day of the evaluation, maybe it's 5 minutes before the evaluation, or prepare, I just wing it. And this is really truly the 90-day evaluation needs to be that pen to paper. The frequent check-ins and conversations that you're going to have, not so much, but this you need to really talk about it. So I love, 75% is always preparing for that position's evaluation. Great. So consistency, every position is going to get the same evaluation. But when we go to when it's prepared, we're getting, you know, anywhere from a week to 2 days is the majority, and then the day of. So if we're talking about preparing, and thank you for your transparency and your honesty. I know as supervisors and leaders, it's difficult, especially if you're managing a large team, to really take that time to prepare. But it's crucial, because as we prepare, we're going to have 3 C's that you want to think about. You want it to be consistent, you want it to be continuous, and you want it to be communicated. So we have an employee coaching companion that we use. It's a tool, resource that's available to our clients, but really what we're talking about is, as you're preparing, make sure that you're observing different things. So with Alfio, a lot of our work is done on the computer, on the phone lines, right? We're reaching out, we're calling clients. So, Alfio, during your 90 days, did you get some consistent feedback on the quality of your calls?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I would say maybe weekly or so, I would have a chat with the Senior Vice President of Sales, who just so happens to have the office across the hall. I know that she listens in on some calls, and she gave me pretty consistent feedback. But we also set that expectation with each other as to the open door type of policy, where if I needed feedback, I could ask for it, but at the same time, she would be providing for the feedback without me having to ask.
Great. And as a supervisor, you set that new employee up for success. So whether you're giving that feedback or you have a peer mentor that's giving that feedback, that's key. And with consistency is that it's not only with a new employee, but you should be giving feedback to everyone who's listening. And it can be very informal, like Alfio was referring to. With him and Carletta, it was kind of an open door policy. Hey, I've got some questions. Or if she overheard a call, was like, hey, you did this and this really well, but here's one area of opportunity that we can talk about. I heard you say this. Let's, here's a better way to present it, or here's a different way that may have connected with that client a little bit better. And then they have those formal sit downs once a week. Let's sit and talk about it. So it was that continuous on the books, on the schedule. Let's talk about it. Because how can you give a 90-day employee evaluation if they're coming in and saying, oh, I haven't seen you since the first day I started? Their defenses are going to be up one of the fears was that they're going to back us into a corner. If they know that we've already been consistent with our feedback and we know what's going on, then we can state facts, we can state dates. In addition, it's going to help you remember. So remember, we only our mind, short-term memory, only retains about the past 30 days. And with that, so if someone's had a great 30 days, they're going to probably get a great 90-day review. However, if they've had a bad last 30 days, their evaluation may not take into account what they did at the beginning. And there may be things that you want to incorporate on there, but you can't do it because you don't have that information. The other thing is to have that consistent evaluation and that self-evaluation. When you're asking your team to complete a self-evaluation, and this is key, why have that self-evaluation? Well, during any evaluation, there are two sets of responsibilities. Remember, it's a two-way street. So your supervisor needs to give them a copy of the evaluation during the first 30 days of hire, setting those clear expectations. This is what we're going to evaluate you on annually and within the 90 days. Send those self-evaluations to the employee 1 to 2 weeks in advance. Now, that allows you to get the information back and complete it. If you like to have the evaluations done within that first 2 weeks, then you may send it a little bit sooner. I would caution that you don't send it more than 3 weeks out, because remember, this is a shorter term. It's 90 days. They're not going to have, so if you're sending it out a month in advance, they're really only going to make comments on their first 90 days. But give them a deadline for a return and then read it. You're asking them to complete it and send it to you in advance for a purpose. When you're reading it, you're able to see, okay, where are our thoughts aligning? Where are they not aligning? Where is there some potential trouble spots that I'm going to need to give a little bit more feedback on because we have a difference of opinion? And then be prepared to discuss it with the employee during evaluation. I know for us, I have both the self-evaluation and my evaluation and use it as a discussion point. So on this, where we're talking about your use of social media, you and I both gave you a meets, or, oh, you gave yourself a needs improvement. Well, I actually think you're meeting or exceeding here, and this is why. So it's two-way. They may think that they're struggling a little bit more, and you're able to give them that motivation and encouragement, or they may think they're a little bit better than you think they are. So we've got to adjust that thought process. On the employee's responsibility for self-evals, you want to make sure that they complete it within the designated time frame. That's going to give you a strong indication of their follow-up and their ability to manage their time. The employee should also be open and honest and give examples and facts, not opinions. So there is a time and a place when you're going to ask for those opinions, but during that self-evaluation, that should not be it. And then be prepared to discuss it during the evaluation. So a lot of times, if it's in writing in advance, you've had time to think about it. You now, as the employee, has have the opportunity to say, here's some areas where I feel like I'm struggling. Can I get some extra help? With Omnia, we do offer an employee performance review. So we've had a lot of our clients reach out to us and say, do you have that form? Yes, we do. We do offer for sales, service, and leadership. But if you can see here, just looking at it, you want to have 3 different categories. Are they needing improvement? Do they meet? And are they exceeding? You want to make sure that you have their job duties and it's easy to understand. And then give them specific feedback. You want to make sure that you just don't say meet. Tell them why they need it. Tell them where they need areas of improvement. It's crucial for that. And then the plans for success, what you want to really look at is as you're starting to, you've completed it, so I've prepared it. Now I need to schedule the time to write it. Definitely don't wait to the last minute, because as employees, we know when it's been the last minute, right, Alfio?
That's right. Absolutely.
We're on a bit time delay here. He's like, and she's like, wait, that was, she wasn't supposed to ask me then. By waiting to the last minute, I mean, if the employee's walking in and you're going, hold on, I've got to print it, then what you're telling them in a very clear but silent message is that this isn't important to me. And during that first 90 days, they're thinking it's highly important to them. They want to make sure that I still have my job. A lot of employers have that 90-day probationary period. So employees are automatically walking in with that thought process of, do I still have a job? And then make sure you review it with them. Please don't just hand it to them and say, here, read this. And if you have any questions, come and talk with me. I have had some people who have said, that's exactly what I do. Communicate. You've got to talk to it. So you've prepared, you've gotten the self-evaluation back, you've planned on how you're going to do it, and now it's really time to put the pen to the paper. So you want to list a few things. You want to address behaviors you want to stop, start, and continue. I want you, so, and you can do that in any combination. I don't recommend kind of sandwiching in those behaviors that you want to stop in the middle of your commentary, because what happens is that people tend to hear the first thing that you say and the last thing that you say and not the middle part. So if you're using examples of strengths and challenges, and you could say something like this, Kim, because you want the third person, it takes it a little bit off of that taking it personally. So Kim arrived late 8 times during her first 90 days. We discussed her tardiness on April 25th, and we have seen marked improvement with her ability to be here on time. So we addressed an issue, we talked about how it was corrected, and now we're seeing that she's on the right path and we want them to continue it. Maybe that you're very good at understanding the research part of the account renewals. However, an area of improvement would be to announce and to talk with clients about cross-selling and account rounding. By talking in third person and talking about their strengths and their challenges, you're really taking it to more of a level where it's not necessarily so personal, and that it takes it out of the ability of the employee to make it personal. Also, as a leader, you don't want to speak in generalities and absolutes. Kim has never closed a sale during her first 90 days. While that may be true, 99% of the time, generalities and absolutes are not true. So you could say, be specific with making that point of Kim had a goal of $1,000 during this 90 days and she has generated $0. Once again, it's a fact that can't be argued with, and that really gives it a little bit more of that ability to be objective and to open up the employee's ears. And then don't give unbalanced feedback. What I mean by that is that, we all have our different communication styles. So some of us are very relational and we communicate very positively and we tend to focus on the positive. We want to be those cheerleaders. So Alfio, you're really great with talking with clients on the phone. and you're here every day and you're dressed appropriately. Well, am I giving him anything that he can take into day 91 and on in his career with Omnia, or did I just give you fluff, Alfio?
Mostly fluff in that line.
So mostly fluff. But if I said, Alfio, I've overheard your conversations with clients. You're very clear and concise. You have generated $3,000 in sales over the past 90 days, which is 60% to your goal. We expect you to be at 100%, but you've got a good start. Is that a good balance between recognizing strengths and giving you next steps?
Yeah, absolutely. You've reestablished goals with me. You've told me my progress. You've let me know that it's acceptable, but there's still room to grow. So it's packed full of valuable information, not just fluff.
Thank you. And once again, there should never be a surprise for the employee. They should know exactly what they're looking for. And then communication is key. When you're sitting down to talk about with the evaluation, you want to make sure that you're setting the environment. Ask yourself, what does your nonverbal environment say to the employee? And it's all about perception. For instance, I was evaluating an employee about a year ago, and it was their 90 days. I had completed it, prepared it, everything was good. Had the evaluation out on my desk, was ready, but I had it under some paperwork because if I had someone come in, I didn't want them to see their coworker's evaluation. For me, I'm thinking I am prepared. I am ready. 2 minutes before they walked in, I control deleted my computer so I wouldn't be distracted by emails. I put my phone on D&D. They walk in and I pull out their evaluation. I'm like, yeah, I'm prepared and engaged. And their thought was, well, where was my evaluation? They thought that it was kind of hiding. So, and I wasn't quite prepared because I pulled it out. So it's all about perception and communication. And what I think is great, someone else may not think it's great. So think about where you're having that conversation. Are you having it in your office? Is your desk cleaned off so that they have that opportunity? Are you hiding behind your computer or available to have that conversation with them eye to eye? Are you allowing them that opportunity to talk? And is it a two-way street? A lot of times we'll schedule time where I can just bullet point it, boom, 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 boom. But then you have to take a step back and say, well, what is your feedback? And then what are your silent messages saying? And this is key. So my silent message with the papers underneath some other paperwork was that I didn't know quite where it was. Was that my intention? No. Is that how they perceived it? Yes. So making sure, once again, that you're scheduling enough time, you're making sure that you're allowing your employees the opportunity to speak. But some of this is basic. Put your cell phone away. Make sure your computer is control alt deleted, making eye contact. So let me ask you this question. What percent of new employees quit within the 6 months? Do you think it's 5%, 30%, 18%, or 43%? And then as you're talking about these new employees and you're having that 90-day evaluation, what are some of the resources you can provide your employee? Online? Is it behavioral? Is it continuous ed? More coffee? Maybe all of the above. Um, Interestingly enough, recent studies have shown that 43%, well, let me rephrase that, anywhere between one third, so about 33%, and 43% of all new employees quit within the first 6 months. Some of it is because of a disastrous first day. The onboarding was horrible. If that's you, go back and watch last week's webinar. So, but that first 66 months, and the majority of them quit within that first 90 days. So there's that disconnect. As leaders, we have to bring it together. And some of that is through the resources that you can provide. Maybe it is online training courses, whether it's something that you provide because you have a learning management system or an LMS, or it's something that you go off-site to bring in. Behavioral development reports. Here at Omnia, we have our selection suite, but we also have our development suite that's meant to be shared with the employee that says, this is who you, here are some of your strengths and challenges. Continuous education is critical. And best of all, I love that all of the above, 53% of you said that, and it is something you really need to tailor what you're providing your employees during that first 90 days to various different routes. You never know what's going to motivate them until you've had those conversations with them and set goals. So after you've had that conversation, you've communicated, I've told you what you've done well, what you need to do. You want to talk about next steps and expectations. So the 90-day evaluation is not a one and done until the annual review is. So, okay, I've had weekly meetings with you up until 90 days, and after 90 days, bye, you're on your own. So as a leader, we have to set very clear next steps, both positive and constructive. And then Alfio, when you had this 90-day evaluation, talk to me a little bit about what some of those next steps were and what some of those goals and how those goals were set with you and Carletta.
Well, it was pretty much a reflection on the first 90 days. So we looked back at the first 90 days and identified the things that were successful, which helped establish the goals for really the next 90 days. And I know that in another 90 days from then, I'll be having another review. We evaluated our communication when it came to fulfilling the really answering the questions that I would have as a new employee, and it seems to be working out just great. So in regards to that, there was nothing to change. We just increased the goals when it came to number of proposals being sent out, and number of new reps and consultants that I was going to be partnering with, because my comfort level grew. I'm definitely in that conscious, competent realm, that 90-day realm right now. I understand what's being required of me at this point, and so now it's just to become even more proficient at it. And I fully understand that every week I will be evaluated kind of informally, and that I should be also evaluating myself, so that way, like you had stated, there's not going to be any surprises at the next 90-day evaluation.
Great. Now, when you were setting your goals during that 90-day evaluation, were you told what your goals were and how to get there, or did you have some feedback about how you were going to get to those goals?
Right, great question. Well, we do have a benefit here at the Omnia of that we utilize our own behavioral assessments. So we understand that people are motivated by different things, and to give you an example, I am a me-oriented, goal-driven type of person. I'm in sales. I'm your classic sales profile, and so it was important for me to be able to set my own goals. I like to know what the company and what my supervisor would like to see of me, but of course, being so goal driven, I had higher expectations. So one of the benefits was that, yes, I did get to set my own goals, but I also was kept in check by the experience of my supervisor. This is not like any role that I had been in the past, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I haven't been a new employee in a very long time, and so I wanted to be in a place where it might not be realistic. So to better prepare myself and to make sure that I was going to see success, I got feedback from Carletta, my direct supervisor, on how to set those goals appropriately. But they were my goals.
Great. One, I think that, you make a very good point is that while we're making goals, we want to make sure that we know who we're talking with. And if it's something that we need to be more specific, we can, or say, okay, here's your goal. Now talk to me about how you're going to get there. Now, during that review period and as you're setting those goals, you want to keep in mind the SMART. All goals need to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So I can say, I want you to generate $1 million in sales, and Alfio may go, you know what? I want to do that too. but is it something that's achievable within the time frames that we have? One of those next steps you can share with your employees, and we recommend this is available for download, is to have them write out some of the 3 strengths that they have and 3 challenges that they have. Now, I always say that your challenges have to be something that you personally have. You can't say, I need better money, better technology, and better hours. But what are some of those challenges? I'm dealing with some um, pretty aggressive in the sales world. I'm dealing with people who are got some pretty aggressive objections to close the sale. Can I have some additional training in that? Or maybe it's a service world where it's that attention to detail, and that's one of their strengths is that they're highly attentive to detail, but their challenge is building the rapport with their client. By opening up that dialogue and those lines of communication, one, you're going to be able to evaluate, are we seeing the same work performance, areas of opportunity, and it'll allow you as that manager to say, okay, now we know where you want to be, and yes, we agree on this. Let's start working out some development goals. And then together you can have a 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month goal that will allow you to have that continuous check-in. As Alfio was saying, that in another 90 days, they're going to have another conversation just to say, hey, where are you with your goals? Also, sometimes to say you have an annual goal of $4,000 or $40,000 to produce, breaking it down into those shorter term goals is going to keep people engaged and or not be overwhelmed by what happens. And then last but definitely not least is the company evaluation. So you've given your employee their evaluation. You have to allow them to have that same amount of time to evaluate the company. Now, there's some value to that. So what you're going to see is, one, you've got fresh eyes in that new employee. Ask them, who was outstanding in that you've come across? Do you have that key player that maybe you didn't realize was a phenomenal trainer, but they're the go-to person? What were some of those obstacles that were encountered? And then where can we improve, and how can we improve, and why? Keep in mind that those fresh eyes. So Alfio, coming in, you're just past your 90 days. Talk to us a little bit about that thing. Who did you receive some really great help from? What were some of your obstacles? And in the spirit of transparency with our participants, what were some of the things that where we can improve on as a company, and why? What did you see?
Well, great question. The first one, who was outstanding and who was outstanding to me as a new employee, I would have to say just, everyone, first of all, of course, but our client advisors, being able to sit in with them and see what they do on a daily basis, how they provide their service to the clients, really helped me with my confidence in being able to know that when I do sell a program to an organization that they're going to back it up. I really learned a lot of the technical aspects of the job from them, just seeing it time and time again, sitting with them. So with that, I would say it was the client advisors that did an outstanding job of giving me the education outside of the training that was provided for me in the first 2 weeks. Some obstacles, primarily it was something that hasn't really been touched on yet today, but it was that change in routine from my previous experience to where I'm at today, adjusting to the new pace, the new environment, the new culture. That was something that I had to work consciously to adjust to, but was made easy by having the systems here in place at the Omnia that really helped that onboarding process go smoothly for me. And now, almost 4 months in, I'm well adjusted, at least I think so, and it's pretty good. What could be improved? I don't think it's any big surprise to you, but it is that training process. I was asked on feedback on the training, and to be in a classroom style setting for 2 weeks, immediately starting the new position, it was a little bit much. While I did learn a lot of valuable information, coming in, my expectation was, yeah, there's going to be some normal training, but it would be kind of mostly on the job while I was doing it. And given my personality style, my behavioral preferences, that's what I was looking forward to. It was a bit of a challenge for me to sit through the training. While it was very valuable in the end, that is something that I had brought up previously that could maybe be improved a little bit.
Thanks for sharing that. And it is adjusting, so you may not have the same training for salespeople as you do for your service team, if that's your industry, but it's knowing what's critical and what can be kind of smoothed over a little bit more. But getting that feedback is instrumental as you're bringing on new employees as well, so that you can make sure that you're setting everyone up for success. So everyone can take a deep breath and sigh and say, okay, whew, we're done because the evaluation is finished. Hooray! Now everyone knows those next steps. They can coach continuously and also provide those resources. You want to be able to say, this is your next steps. I've heard what you've said. Now let's move forward with it. You don't necessarily have to provide those resources at that very moment, but knowing what they need and how to move forward is critical. When you're looking at their self-evaluation, if they've said some things that they need, then that's wonderful. You're able to follow up with them and say, okay, I've heard this, I read this, let's talk about it. So let's go ahead. If you have any questions, type it in. I know our time is drawing to a near. I see, are the forms medical specific? No, our the templates that we have for those performance evaluations are very general. However, we can customize them to the company standard. So we have that ability for additional charges to upgrade to make it very customized. Now, this is our first month of our 4-week series. We're going to do that again later on in the year, but our next webinar will be in May, when it's about toxic employees, when conflict can't be resolved. Also, make sure that you're downloading your action plan, the presentation. We're also going to give you some information about that performance evaluation, and that you're following us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I will say that one of the questions that we're typically asked is, how do we implement a 90-day evaluation if we haven't done it already? So we're mid-year. Some people have received it, some people haven't received it. My recommendation is that for that next hiring range, inform everyone we're going to begin this 90-day process, but then also you should be meeting at least, at the minimum, on a quarterly basis with all of your employees to touch base. I like monthly, but it depends on your size in the company. It may be that quarterly is enough. For us, we have a lot of informal conversations. So if there's an issue, very open door, we talk about it. All of my employees know exactly where they stand, the good, the bad, and the areas of improvement. And so their reviews are never, ever a surprise. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us. Alfio, do you have any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, just to remember from a supervisor's position, as I've owned my own businesses, I've been the supervisor of sales teams in the past. I can understand some of the pitfalls that you might run into with the evaluation system, but it's just very clear that you need to set the expectations up front for your new employees, have that open communication with them. But when it comes time for the evaluation, you want to make sure it's comfortable, but you want to make sure that they understand that it's formal. Since most of you are clients of Omnia, utilize those behavioral assessment reports that you've received. Dive into those developmental insights and really understand who it is that you're bringing on. You're investing time, you're investing your company money in this employee. So, understand what drives them and what motivates them, how they want to communicate, and set those expectations clearly along those guidelines. And understand that, new employees, though, they need to know that they have to be active learners, that they can't stay quiet. They have to ask questions, even if they're not comfortable with it. They need to continuously ask questions. It is a two-way channel here, and they need to know that's okay in your organization. There will be obstacles for them, but they need to be able to set those realistic goals like I had mentioned earlier. So very important to keep the evaluation system rolling. Don't just stop it at 90 days, and you'll just continuously see the progress of your new employees.
Thank you for sharing, Alfio. And once again, thank you so much for being a part of us. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available in about a week on our YouTube, so follow us. If you're interested in our performance evaluation forms, as a thank you for joining us today, we are making those available. They are typically $99 per template. However, we are offering as a thank you all three for $275. So if you are interested or have more questions, please feel free to contact myself, Kim Bussey, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, next month. We are not here next week. We have a week off, and then we'll be back in May. Thank you. Have a great day.